Okay. Recently, I locked in the domain internetskeptic.com, and this is one of the first presentations that we were able to get up and running. We have one out there right now for ethanol. And if you want to take a look at some of the things that we're working on, the ethanol one gives a very good idea. What we typically do is we go out and we find these politically interesting topics like global warming. And in this scenario, what we do is we take the data that they provide, take a look at it, and see if it shows or proves what they're trying to trying to say. A lot of this data you'll see in Al Gore's movie, and what we're going to do is we're just going to take it and we're going to apply a critical eye to it and see, does the data really support the conclusions that they reach within the movie, or is there something really behind this global warming? Basically, I'm just going to present the data, and what I hope you're going to say is that's not true, because everything that you're going to see here will basically be supported by the documents that support it right behind it. And that's why I gave you the discs. When you have these discs, you can go home and take a look at it, and every one of the charts, every one of the little quotes will have a link to it, so you just click on it and it'll take you to the source so that you can see for yourself that the data that we're using here is actually real, and it's basically being used to create arguments that I think you'll see really aren't supported by the facts. All right, well, let's get started here. And I do encourage you to take a look at the global warming or the Internet Skeptic website. Well, what are they saying? How many people, by the way, has seen Al Gore's movie? All right, well, it's worth seeing because it's a very good work as far as propaganda goes. And you'll see why in a little bit. $8.50 too. Yeah, so exactly. It's basically a donation to his campaign. What are they saying? They're saying man-made CO2 is causing global warming. Man-made CO2 has pushed atmospheric CO2 to record highs. Temperatures are at historic highs. That there is a scientific consensus behind global warming. And Al Gore is now running for president. Right? So those are what they're saying. Does anyone disagree with what's up there? I mean, if I went out there and asked someone on the street, would anyone disagree with any of those comments that I just made there?
Yeah, I would.
What would you disagree, George?
All of them.
This is would you agree this is the conventional wisdom?
Well, that's what they're saying.
CO2, man causes CO2 to increase. That increase in CO2 has led to global warming. There's a cause and effect.
Well, the first argument is a tautology. It's a circular argument. You have to assume that global warming exists. You can say that.
Yeah.
And we haven't even established that global warming exists.
Yeah. But pretty much the theory, at least that Al Gore will provide, is that man increases CO2, which leads to an increase in temperature. And here's what they have. Now this actually comes from a presentation that we went to down at OSU. We went down and they had a guy from Berkeley, and you'll have a little bit of his data here in a second. And these come right from his presentation. So when you get your CD, you can go put it in there, you can go click on these images, and it takes you right to this global warming experts website. And this is the data that he shows. This is the whole basis behind their theory. Over here you have CO2. You have atmospheric CO2 over time. So you have time on the x-axis, and then you have parts per million over here. So as you can see, CO2 has been increasing. Right? Here you have man's production of CO2. You have, once again, the amount, and over time, gas, oil, coal, nuclear. But as you can see that man's been producing a lot more CO2. Atmospheric CO2 is going up. It's a no-brainer. Man's causing atmospheric CO2 to go up. That's the whole theory. And down here is actually what he says. This comes from flip that back. Okay, down here, the increase in atmospheric CO2 is primarily due to world energy consumption and secondarily due to deforestation. That's a definitive statement. There's two causes, man. Deforestation and the production of basically burning fossil fuels, world energy.
That is their quote.
That's their quote. And once again, you can click on that link and it'll take you right to his website. And this is, by the way, this is the guy that is so prominent that they brought him to OSU. This is what OSU holds up. This is John Hart, Energy and Resources Group, University of California, Berkeley. Global warming, why the skeptics are wrong. That's me. And why I'm wrong. And we saw him down at the Fawcett Center. Here is his chart. Okay? Once again, you have temperature and atmospheric CO2. The thing here, though, is, if you notice here, here's the previous peak of atmospheric CO2. Here's where the current level is. On these charts that they show, they'll show you that CO2 is at a level never seen before. Ever. On any chart they'll show that this level of 370 CO2 has never been reached before. At any time before in world history. Okay? Here's a little fly in the ointment, though. While the CO2 is way higher than ever before, temperatures are actually dropping since the recent peak 10,000 years ago. Okay? So, temperatures are at record highs. Okay? Right there you have it. MSN's first half of 2006 was warmest on record in the U.S. You can't argue with that. There's a scientific consensus. Right there it is. Washington Post. Undeniable global warming. There is a scientific consensus on the fact that Earth's climate is heating up and human activities are part of the reason. No ifs, ands, or buts. Okay? Down here with the CD, once again, you can click here and you've got Sir David Attenborough telling you that there's a scientific consensus. There's no doubt out there. This global warming is real, man's causing it, and we've got to stop it. The problem is, we've been there before. When I was growing up, I didn't fear global warming. I feared a coming ice age. Many of you people are probably my age, and you probably remember this. When you take a look at it, once again, you had a scientific consensus. Now, this comes from back in 1975. Okay? And as you see there, it's called Global Cooling, came out of Newsweek. And when you read this article, you'll see that there was a scientific consensus. Back then, there was a media blitz. Okay? There was an educational blitz. I remember being taught about it. Okay? Political motives. One of Jimmy Carter's big thing was the green, the solar power, the energy crisis. There was a whole group of political motives back then. And there was a lot of wasted money. And I saw this firsthand. I used to work at 32nd Street in San Diego, which was a naval base. And they had, on top of their clinic, they had all these solar panels. Okay? That were put in back in the 70s. They're all broken. Total waste. So what happened after the 70s, as you know, the energy prices fell. And so we spent a bunch of money. And the key was, back then, the scientific consensus was dead wrong. Within 30 years, we've gone from global cooling, coming ice age, to global warming. Why were they wrong? Why were they wrong? Because, well, we'll get to that. Okay? What's kind of interesting, though, is if you take a look at what they said back then. Okay? Back then, what was the culprit? They couldn't blame CO2, so they said back then it was the sun was getting weaker. So the sun's output was cooling, right? Well, right there's the first fly in the ointment, because they're saying the sun is responsible for the temperature of the Earth.
That's a newsflash.
Yeah, exactly. Okay? Who could have thought that one up? And what was so funny, though, is today they're all worried about the melting ice cap, right? Back then, they wanted to melt the ice cap. This is one of their proposals, such as melting the Arctic ice cap by covering it with black soot. They were going to warm the Earth back then by melting the ice cap. I wish I made this stuff up, and I'm not. Okay? Here's another thing back then. Oh, by the way, did anyone listen to WTVN on the way to work, or the way here today? About 5:45? Well, it turns out that